Well, hopefully in this Diwali special on the India story, you've got a lot of advice on where you should be investing your money. So we're going to leave you on this program with some entertainment as well. And one of the most awaited series for quite some time, The Railway Men, set in the backdrop of the Bhopal gas tragedy. It's been capturing a lot of headlines, and I did get a chance to catch up with the entire team behind The Railway Men just a short while back. So I'm going to leave you with the special interview that I did with the team. Well, we are now in the era where when you're really sitting and waiting for a piece of content to come out, it doesn't have to be a film that you're waiting for. It can be a series. And one of the most awaited series in quite some time, The Railway Men, about to be out there on Netflix, big budget, impactful, and based on an event that has left a scar on the collective psyche of the nation, the Bhopal gas tragedy of 1984. Fantastic ensemble cast, and it's great to have them all with us, along with the director, Shiv. Thank you all so much for being with us. Each one of you is the legend. So Shiv is here, of course, Madhavan, KK, Rabil. Thank you all so much for being with us. I'm going to start with you, though, Shiv. A lot of expectations that I said, and that's also interesting how you can have so much expectation and so much interest in what was once OTT pe aa raha hai, it's not that big. Yeah. Now OTT and things like this releasing as big as a film, including in the budgets.
Yes. So, thank you for having us here. And, now the digital spectrum is not, it's made its own space in India and across the world. People are looking at digital content on the same lines as cinematic content and content that you can follow in cinemas, because you get a chance on unlike something that's coming in the theaters, which is limited by the amount of time the content can preview for, as well as box office expectations, and you have like that weekend number, the weekend figures to kind of fulfill. Unlike digital, where you can choose content, you can choose to play content as per your wish and as per your own timings. In the we're coming and delivering it to you in your lap, so you can come and watch it. You can watch it at home whenever you feel like. And more than that, it's enabled filmmakers, especially me, especially with this series, that we can take stories that are not spoken about so often and tell them in a fashion that we could not say in cinemas, because we have the advantage of episodes and longer time and more freedom to say stories the way we want to. Especially like in this case, this one is like a 4-part series limited to one season, 4 hours. You can watch it in one go, hopefully, and really enjoy it. And
binge watch it or watch it bite-sized as
yes,
the time,
exactly.
as the time,
yes, and at your own free will. Yeah.
But I mean, that help us sort of draw the comparisons and the contrast when you're doing things at this level for Netflix compared to doing a film.
So when we accept a project, sometimes it comes endorsed by an OTT that's already going to showcase it, or it comes with a production who says, I'm going to make the series and then we'll sell it. With Railway Men, it was a predestined decision where they said they make the series and then we'll see which platform to go to. So I was very curious to see what Yash Raj had in mind, because it was their first project on OTT, and with Yash Raj, you're assured of quality. But this one,
and their entire heritage, their entire history has been cinema. So It's like, okay, we are going to now try this. Because obviously, it's also an indication of how big now OTT has become. That Yash Raj getting into it.
Exactly. And getting it into in such a big way. And for me, it was a matter of great interest that they would choose to get into it with a story like this. With Shiv debuting with a story like this about the Bhopal gas tragedy. And Vikram, I've always had this angst where I keep thinking that it's always the West that's been portrayed as people who can save the world, or a Hollywood movie where if there's an alien attack, it's always the American who's out there to save the world, and the rest of us just follow suit. And we've had our own sense of heroes and things, and most of the battles have been that we've been known for, our independence struggle or such like. Bhopal gas tragedy is one of the bigger ones in the world. It's one of the biggest industrial disasters that is known to man. You don't see much Instagram reels on it or a documentation on it. More people have perished in the Bhopal gas tragedy in one night than have perished during the tsunami in Japan, for instance, right?
And I'm going to come to the stories of heroism that you're capturing, which are not spoken about. We know a lot of the villains of that particular story, but not the heroes. So that's why I'm going to be interested in that. But just to finish this sort of a theme about the scale, anybody who's seen the trailer, and KK, the trailer's obviously got a lot of love. It's sort of seeing the size and the scale of it. It's not the only, you've done these before at very high budget. Budget doesn't seem to be a constraint anymore?
Thankfully not, because in OTT, especially if you have an 8-part series, for example, it's like making about 3 films. It's a long duration. And the advantage in OTT is that you get to juice out everything that is there to its maximum, including characters, including stories, etc., etc. So for me, OTT is an extended form of storytelling, which has got an end to, unlike a serial, for example. So it's somewhere there in between. It's a madhyam mark. It's a middle path, and to make things believable is expensive at the same time. To make things non-believable also might be expensive for other reasons, but to make things believable, like it's in this series of ours, it's an expensive proposition, because you need to create everything that is so believable that people are involved with the entire experience of it. So yeah, and as she was saying, OTT comes to you, we come to your house, we come to the audience's house, and you can watch it at leisure whenever you want to, vis-a-vis theatrical releases in which the audiences have to go at a particular time. So yeah, budgets, some projects, of course, the budgets are a constraint, but most of them now have come to the realization that if you got to create something which is world content, you need to spend some money.
I mean, you seem to have only been doing largely a lot of web projects, right? Kala, web project, others. Yeah. So web projects are the ones that you've already been looking at?
No, I have not been looking or planning anything, sir. I genuinely, as things have been going, I've been taking it as it comes. It so happens that, my career started when OTT was booming, and it just matched perfectly. But honestly, for me, of course, because I've grown up watching films in the cinemas, I would, if I'm given the opportunity, I would love to do that. But for me, working in a film or a series, right, or acting in a story, right, it is not about OTT or theatre. It's just the love of performing for the story, and that's that.
Okay. Let's just come now to the specifics around this, and I'm going to try and get as many spoilers out of it as I possibly can. Well, actually, I'm not. What I was just saying, villains and heroes. When it comes to Bhopal, one of the worst incidents we've had in this country, very clear villains, and we know some of the people to blame who are there. But the stories of heroism, and at the back, when you saw the trailer, you say, yes, there must have been a lot of heroes that night. A lot of people who risked their own lives trying to save others, but we don't know about them.
Yeah, so, that's exactly what attracted us in the first place. In one of the darkest nights in Indian history, this was a ray of hope. There were some people who went beyond their duty, beyond their responsibility towards their families, beyond their, own lives to save other people. And that's the beauty of the Railwaymen. The reason behind us making this was this. The reason that the fact that we could get to tell this story through such a lens, through such a viewpoint that, hasn't been seen before. Was our inspiration, and was the reason we took this up. Because if we could give you a lot about what happened on that night through the journey of these extraordinary men, we thought that could be.
But it's still fictionalized, right? This is not what you sometimes say, this is a true story or based on a true story. This is inspired from many true stories.
Yes, it's inspired from many true stories. So basically, in a cinematic, in cinema, you kind of have to give characters like ebbs and flows and, journeys and character arcs. And for that, we've like kind of taken true stories which we heard on ground, read books, met multiple people, went to Bhopal, researched on ground, took all those stories and amalgamated all of them and, put them into character arcs and created these amazing characters out of them. And,
Well, there seems to be an interesting way now to really tell the stories. You're fictionalizing it, but you're still being inspired by what actually happened. Is that what you're also finding? This particular style of a lot of the stories that we are seeing are real stories, fictionalized, of course, but based on reality.
Yeah, so when you have your base which is solid, when you say it's based on actual facts, then it becomes very easy not to have to create the world again. And then you get to create characters based on multiple characters and you amalgamate them into one. So that becomes even more enticing. And so I think it's one of the best ways to base a narrative. And so that, people are always guessing which part of it is true and not, and eventually just forget and become impacted by what the storytelling is.
Why do you think that these stories have never filtered out? 1984 was a long, long time back. Actually, most of the country today was not born at the time when the Bhopal caste tragedy happened. Yet it has left a scar on the country, but the bad people, not the good people. Why do you think their stories get lost?
I guess it's also about information dissemination, because information wasn't available then. If it was today, it would have been all over the news. And the bad people could get away because of that, I think. And the good people were not known because of that. So we are trying our, in this story, to put it in a different perspective, it's about an organization called the Railways. Now, you've got to understand that the railways in India is the biggest and the widest in the world. The networking of railway, the rail tracks, etc., and the kind of infrastructure that we have is colossal compared to the world. And number two is that it's not just the job of a railway guy to reach you on time. It's also to reach you safely. Okay, so safety is an inherent quality in a railwayman. Now that quality comes to fore and transforms into courage because of humane reasons in this series, and that's what actually caught me as far as the screenplay is concerned. I realized that here we are talking of an organization called the Railways and the railwaymen and their contribution and the courage that they had to save as many lives as possible. As far as the previous question is concerned, yes, I think it's all to do with how much news was available then and how much news could be controlled, etc., etc. So that is a different perspective.
Yeah, as you were saying, there were no reels at that time. There were no people live tweeting what was happening. There was no, 24-hour news channels to actually capture the magnitude of what happened. Any individual story that you encountered while working on this project that really stuck out for you?
Sir, it was not because I'm from a different generation. I was really, this generation is not aware of this tragedy as much, right? And that's a shame. But when the story came, it was not the tragedy itself that attracted me towards the story because I was not aware of it. It was the perspective of heroism, right? When you think of a hero, you think of, this larger-than-life figure with a cape and superpowers and he can do anything. But you never look at the common man as a hero. And that perspective, that what is heroism, right? It's just a point of view of how you look at a crisis, right? And the decision you make at that point of crisis, that's heroism. That's what it all boils down to. That's what attracted me towards the story. And then when I started working for the film is when I truly got, engrossed in the research of it. And in the research of it, I started realizing that this is something our generation must know. And it is through the film that I really started to understand what the tragedy was.
I don't know, we were talking just a little while earlier about the fact that many of these stories from India actually would make sense for an international audience. And I'm sure that's one of the things when you're working on projects like this, you do keep in mind. These are stories that can actually translate all around the world.
Yeah, and the whole idea of putting this story out is that, to make people realize that small amount of carelessness, people are not doing their duty at the right time. For example, this grass tragedy was just negligence. It was not a preconceived, intent to kill people. It was just people who didn't take their job seriously. So putting these stories out, and especially internationally, maybe if you can make people aware that your small responsibility or the lack of it can actually end up in a tragedy that makes 20,000 people just vanish overnight, and that's exactly what happened in Bhopal. So I think on that front, making a story list and making it international makes a lot of sense.
When you were doing the research for this, did something surprise you when you were? I've been to Bhopal. I've been to that place. I've been to that gas tank and that place. It's a very bleak place, right? And even now, so many decades later, it's still a very bleak place. Is there anything in the research that you saw which surprised you? And how much of these stories are actually based on truth? I should also add that.
No, a lot of like when you watch the series, when the audiences watch the series, they'll realize that a lot of it is, they'll be able to tell like this is based from, this is from true stories. There's also like a nice reminder at the end from what's picked from where and stuff like that. So you kind of, make connections, but, and also to give you perspective of what happened on the night. But when we went on ground in Bhopal, I remember going inside the factory and, one of the most exciting things was kind of like, we wanted to get this show like to look super authentic. So we had to actually go into the factory, take like old images and, put everything together to make like a ground map of the factory of where the entrance was, where did people run from, where did people go, because, there were like so many tales of like, which were contrasting. So we kind of had to like take multiple information sources and, get that out there. So I think that was fantastic to, do an experience and, hopefully people will see this and recognize it.
Take your last thoughts to leave us with. One of the things that sometimes happens when you're making these serials or films about old events is there's a belated sense of pushing for justice, justice for the victims, justice for the people who were guilty, who may have got away, scot-free, and recognition for people who are not recognized till now. Is justice, you think, an important thing that you should walk away from this with?
I think justice is an all-pervading concept. It's not now, it's not yesterday, it's all the time. So if something can happen because of this, I think all of us would be really, really happy. Because it's out there, the pain, the effort, the courage, everything is out there in this series. So, and people who have watched it have, they can endorse it for themselves. But it does leave you with that feeling that of people not being recognized at the same time, many people getting away with it, etc. So I think on both fronts, I hope something happens after watching this series.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. It was great speaking to you, and looking forward to seeing this and remembering 1984. Look, people should not forget. And as I said, a large number of people in this country were not born when Bhopal 1984 happened. But it is something that has left a scar on the psyche of this nation. And you should not forget. You should not forget what happened in Bhopal. Not the bad people and not the good people. And that's all we're going to have for you on this episode of the India Story. Do join us again next week. Bye for now.